All right, so it's about time for me to continue, folks. So as we begin to get back into the tour here, let me start by telling you about something that sometimes people ask about, which is why does Chicago even exist in the first place? Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that come together to make a little village into a big important city, et cetera, but one of the most fundamental early things here in Chicago that really gave rise to its growth was being a portage. So of course, a portage is when you move goods from one boat a short distance over land to put those goods on another boat on a different body of water to continue a journey. Chicago served as a portage between the Great Lakes, Lake Michigan specifically, and the Mississippi River Valley, because only a few miles west of us is the Des Plaines River, which is a navigable tributary of the Mississippi. So Chicago originally grew as a portage connecting the ports on Lake Michigan to the ports on the Des Plaines River. And then that portage attracted the railroads to build here. The railroads attracted highways and air travel, et cetera. So one of the earliest fundamental things to make Chicago grow was our transportation hub position as a port on the middle of the United States. Now in front of us and up to the right, directly to the right, there's a limestone tower with a peaked black roof and a silver statue standing on the roof. Directly to the right, in the distance, stone tower, black roof, silver statue on top. That's the Chicago Board of Trade building. The Board of Trade building is from 1930. It was the tallest building in Chicago for 25 years, from 1930 to 1955. It's Art Deco style. The statue on the roof is meant to be a depiction of the Roman goddess Ceres, goddess of agriculture and abundance. That's because the Board of Trade is an agriculture, futures, and commodities exchange. Now, we're going to move from the former tallest building in Chicago to the current tallest building in Chicago. In front of us and up to the right is this giant, dark steel tower with two white antennas on top. That is the tallest building in the city of Chicago. The name of it, spelled W-I-L-L-I-S, pronounced Sears Tower. Its original name was Sears Tower. Its official name since 2002 has been Willis Tower, but in our hearts, for the most part, Willis Tower is still Sears Tower. Now, it is the tallest building in Chicago. It was the tallest building in the world for 22 years, from 1974 until 1996. It was designed by Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, with lead architect Mr. Bruce Graham and lead structural engineer Dr. Fazlur Rahman Khan. So, how tall is it? It is 1,454 feet tall, which is 443 meters tall, and it has 110 stories. Folks, none of those numbers include the antennas on top. The antennas on top do not count toward the height of the building. It is the tallest in the city. It was the tallest in the world, all without including the antennas on top. Now, look up again. There it is again. Notice the different roof levels it has. Each level of the roof is the roof of a semi-independent square tower. The building is composed out of 9 structurally separate square towers in a 3x3 grid that go up to different heights and are bundled together to support each other. That's called tubular bundled construction, developed by Dr. Fazlur Khan, specifically for the Sears Tower. Folks, here's our view all the way from the bottom to the top, directly to the right. So the original owner and main tenant of the building, as well as the company that commissioned its construction, was the headquarters of Sears Department Stores and Catalogs. Sears moved out and sold it in the 1990s. The new owner, the Blackstone Group, sold the naming rights to Willis Insurance Group of London, England in 2002. So today, Blackstone owns the building, Willis Insurance owns the name, Sears isn't around much, and none of those companies is currently its main tenant. Does anyone know what company takes up the most space at Willis Tower today? United Airlines. The headquarters of United Airlines is the main tenant of Willis Tower. And finally, folks, give me a guess. How many elevators does Willis Tower have? Someone says 12. 12 on the table. I heard a 15. 50. 50. Folks, it's 107. There are 107 elevators in the Willis Tower. This is because very few of them go all the way from the bottom to the top. If you are heading to an office up high, you'll have to ride 2 or 3 elevators. That elevator relay prevents an excess of space on any given floor from being just elevator shafts, which would make for some sparse, unappealing floor plans. Now, on the right side of the boat, we have this big brown building. The big brown granite building on the right is the Chicago Mercantile Exchange Center. It's from 1986 by Fujikawa and Johnson Architects. The CME Group, as it's known today, is the largest commodities and derivatives exchange in the world by value of assets traded in it. Now, that's kind of, sort of, more or less a stock exchange where the market prices of goods, especially agriculture goods, are set. Now, a lot of our finance industry here in downtown Chicago has a lot to do with commodities, agriculture, and food production. We have several commodities exchanges in the city, and several global food production corporations are headquartered in Chicago, including Mondelez, which owns Nabisco and lots of other brands, Kraft Heinz, which owns Kraft and Heinz and lots of other brands, and of course the Wrigley division of Mars Wrigley, which isn't only a chocolate and gum company anymore. They are a global food production brand as well these days. Now, in front of us and up to the left, after the next bridge, up high to the left, right after this bridge, there are those white crisscrossing steel beams standing on the roof of that gray building. Up to the left, white steel beams on the roof. Those are trusses. The south end of this gray building on the left is built over a dense area of railroads leading to the train station to the south, and those train tracks take up so much space, there isn't much space left to hold the building up. So instead of being supported from the ground up, the south end of that building is structurally hanging from the trusses on the roof. Now, it was originally built, well, I'll tell you this, so it's currently owned by the Boeing Company. This building is in airplanes. The Boeing Company is the main tenant of that building, but it was originally built in the 1990s by Perkins and Will Architects to be the headquarters of more of a down-to-earth company, that being Morton Salt. Morton Salt is still headquartered in Chicago, no longer in the Boeing building. Quickly, folks, on the right side of the boat, one of my favorite little spots in Chicago. The thing about Starbucks is that Chicago was the first city outside Seattle to have a Starbucks. We're the first step that Starbucks took on their journey to global domination. Now, on the right side of the boat, this red brick building on the right stands on the location right here on the riverbank on the right side, where in 1860 there was once a temporary convention center called the Wigwam, which hosted the convention that nominated Abraham Lincoln to run for president. Right there on the right side of the boat, where that brick building from 1912 stands today. Folks, we are crossing over Wolf Point for our third and final time. Directly to the right, this green glass building on the right is 333 West Wacker Drive. It's by Cohn, Pedersen, and Fox from 1983. Now, it's a great example of contextual architecture. Green glass, green river, curve in the building, bend in the river, matching the surroundings. That's contextual architecture. But folks, next I have a very important piece of Chicago history to share with you. On the left side of the boat, where the Salesforce Tower is today, is where? Right here at Wolf Point in 1833, 191 years ago, the settlers along the river had a town meeting to decide for the first time what the official name of their newly organized township would be. And what name do you suppose they settled on? Chicago. Not a trick question. It was Chicago. But where did the word Chicago come from? Well, 150 years before that town meeting is when the native Potawatomi first encountered French explorers Marquette and Joliet. Now, Marquette and Joliet were canoeing up the river, mapping it out for the French Empire, and the Potawatomi told Marquette and Joliet the name of the river, saying the river was called Chicago, or maybe it was closer to Chicago, and then 150 years later, those settlers named their city after an approximation of the native Potawatomi name of this river. But folks, they might have chosen a different name if any of them had taken the time to learn what the Potawatomi name Chicago actually meant. Chicago means the place of bad smells. That's true. It's because the river flowed through that swamp, and in that swamp on the riverbanks grew an abundance of a species of wild onion. In the summer heat, those onions would ripen and rot and stink, and that's how the Potawatomi referred to this location. New York's the Big Apple, Chicago's the smelly onion. Thanks to modern technology, oh, never mind, the train's not coming this way. Never mind, I usually tell a joke there. Did you have a question? So folks, first of all, I'll explain what I meant. So whenever a train's about to go over the river, I say, thanks to modern technology, the train will cross the river undetectable, and then it, like bangs its way over the bridge, and it's very funny, and you would have laughed a lot. But anyway, there wasn't a train there. So I had a question, which was, what were those green heads in front of the merchandise mart? I didn't talk about those. Did you see those green heads facing the merch mart? So those are former kings of American retail, because the merch mart, remember, was built by Marshall Field, a department store owner. So some of those one of those heads is Marshall Field, one of them is Aaron Montgomery Ward of Montgomery Wards, one of them is Woolworth of Woolworths, and neither of them is Sears or Roebuck. None of them are Sears or Roebuck, because when Sears and Roebuck got founded around the year 1900, the other retailers didn't like them. They didn't like Mr. Sears or Mr. Roebuck. They thought they were sort of hucksters selling cheaper products that didn't last as long, sort of scamming. But then anyway, when someone else took over Sears and Roebuck, his name was Mr. Wood. I think Robert Wood was his name. He has a bust there, Mr. Wood of Sears and Roebuck. So, on the right side of the boat, there's this glass tower with the concrete ornamentation going all the way up to the top. That's 77 West Wacker Drive. It's a great example of postmodern style. It's got Roman-style arches at the bottom, modern glass and steel throughout, and a Greek temple-inspired roof. Postmodern style is defined as combining past with present. That particular building is from 1992 by Ricardo Bofill. And then after this bridge on the right is this tall, dark, greenish gray tower. It's home of the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency, a company that created iconic American advertising characters, including Ronald McDonald, the Keebler Elf, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, the Jolly Green Giant, and Tony the Tiger, just to name a few. All originally Chicagoans, all from Leo Burnett. Now, in front of us and up to the right, ahead of us on the right side of the river, there's that green tower with the golden spire on top. Green tower with gold on top, up to the right. That's the Carbide and Carbon building. It's from 1928 by the Burnham Brothers. Now, it was built during Prohibition, when all alcohol was illegal in the United States. This green tower, tapering up to a decorative golden topper, is meant to resemble a champagne bottle in protest to Prohibition. It's the only building in the city clad with green terracotta, and the gold on top is real gold leaf. Now, folks, ahead of us and to the right, there's that tall, skinny tower. The tall, skinny tower ahead of us is the Mather Tower. It's from 1929 by Riddle and Riddle. What I want you to notice is that the very top two floors of this white, skinny tower on the right side, the very top two floors are a lighter shade of white. That's because they're new. The original top to that building was torn down in the year 2000, and the replacement top two floors up there were actually built as one solid piece at street level and then flown up by helicopter to be fixed on top of the tower. That was done in 2002 by Masterworks Development. All right. In front of us to the left is the building from whence we came, that white tiled building with the clock tower on top. That's the Wrigley building. I'll tell you about the Wrigley building at the end of the tour, but we're going to skip ahead, look farther ahead to the left. So farther ahead to the left, right after the next bridge on the left, there's that limestone building with the very intricately ornamented top. Ahead of us up to the left, limestone building with a very fancy looking top. That's the Tribune Tower with the American flag on top up there. In the 1920s, the Chicago Tribune held a contest seeking the most beautiful design for this office tower. Well, seeking the most beautiful design for a new office tower to be their new home. They selected this neo-Gothic Art Deco style design, submitted by Howell and Hood as the winner, bankrolled its construction, and was headquartered there from 1925 till 2018. In addition, embedded in the walls of the Tribune Tower are genuine pieces of the Berlin Wall, Great Wall of China, the Alamo, the former World Trade Centers, many other newsworthy things from around the world, visible and labeled on the outside walls of the Tribune Tower. It's condos today, the Tribune Tower there. Now, after this bridge, not bridge, there isn't a bridge, sorry. On the right side of the boat, after this brown brick building, right behind this brown brick building, way up high to the right, there's that tall, white, rectangular building. You can see the sunlight's catching one side of it. That tall, white, rectangular building way up high, directly to the right, that's the Aon Center. Now, the Aon Center is from 1973. It was originally the Standard Oil building, designed by Edward Durrell Stone. It was the tallest building in Chicago for a couple months till the Sears Tower surpassed it. It's the 4th tallest building in the city today. And folks, Edward Durrell Stone, the architect, originally clad the Standard building with imported Italian Carrara marble. The same stuff Michelangelo's David is sculpted out of. It was a very expensive stuff. It made the whole thing glisten beautifully on sunny days. And after 9 years, those plates of marble, 3/4 of an inch thick, started to crack and fall to the sidewalk. Rocks were raining from the sky. The city made the architects reclad it with a sturdier stone. What you saw up there today is Carolina granite. Now, the process of replacing the marble with the granite cost $80 million, half what it was to build the building. An expensive mistake that goes to show never take marble for granite. Yeah, folks, that story's true. It's not only the setup to a terrible joke, it's also all the truth. I'll admit my delivery on it can be rocky, but it's important to me that you understand that my boss hates that joke and it takes real stones for me to tell it. Now, moving on, in front of us and up to the right, there's a very tall blue glass tower with a bit of a wiggly shape. Very tall blue glass tower up to the right. That's the St. Regis, Chicago. The St. Regis was finished in 2020. It is 1,200 feet or 365 meters tall with 101 stories. It's currently the 3rd tallest building in Chicago, and it's currently the tallest building in the world designed by a woman, a lead female architect. That woman is Jeannie Gang. Jeannie Gang was born and raised in Belvidere, Illinois, about 60 miles away. She's still based in Chicago with her firm, Studio Gang Architects. Now, way up near the top of the St. Regis, look up near the top, there are 2 floors missing. Looks like there's a gap in the building way up near the top. As the building went up, the architects saw, using their computer models, that there was more potential than originally anticipated for the steel frame of the building to sway in the wind. Now, it wasn't going to fall over. The issue is that the frame could bend in the wind so much that it could crack the glass walls. So in order to protect the windows, they had to give the wind a space to blow through to relieve the pressure. That's called a blow-through feature creatively. The elevator and utility shafts are still enclosed in the center of that space. Now, folks, we are approaching our easternmost point of the tour. Now, as we do, I'm going to have to give you a quick announcement, and this goes for everyone downstairs as well. Hello, downstairs people. Hello. Hello, downstairs. We only have about 15 minutes left in the tour, so that means it's time to think about hitting the heads, which is boat speak for using the restroom. So it's time to use the restroom soon, if you were going to do that before getting off the boat. But next, we're going to talk about the river itself. In the city of Chicago's earliest days, we treated the Chicago River as any industrial city of the 19th century would treat a river. In a word, badly. We threw all of our waste into the river, sewage, making the river an open-air sewer flowing to Lake Michigan. Lake Michigan is our source of drinking water. By polluting the lake, we were poisoning ourselves with our own sewage. Now, we knew we had to solve this problem. Being Chicagoan, we worked hard to make it someone else's problem. Instead of solving the issue, we made it literally go away by making the Chicago River, the only natural river in the world, permanently reversed by humankind. Here's how. Not far to the west is the Des Plaines River, which is naturally separate from the Great Lakes and flows toward the Mississippi. To carry our waste away, we connected the Chicago to the Des Plaines by building a canal between them named the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. And at 3 a.m., January 2nd, 1900, we blew up the dams we had built separating the Chicago from the canal. The Chicago filled in the canal, connected to the Des Plaines at a lower elevation than the lake. So with a new lowest point to flow toward, the Chicago River reversed, taking water from Lake Michigan to the Mississippi Valley to the west. Not all of our neighbors were as pleased for us as we were for ourselves upon our feat of engineering. In fact, our neighbors around the lake, the states of Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana, jointly sued Chicago in federal court for draining the lake and proved eventually that our river would take so much water that parts of Lake Michigan would no longer be navigable. So we were forced to build, directly ahead of us, the Chicago Harbor Lock. It's those two gray gates in the concrete wall. That's the lock, built in the 1930s for one reason, to slow down the flow of lake water entering the still reversed but much cleaner Chicago River, and it is the only direct connection between the lake and river today. Take a moment to enjoy the view. This will be a brief pause, just a minute or two. Remember, do not stand on the seats or the benches.
저기 아시아에 저 비행기. 네, şu an buraya döndük. 나는 그거.